Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Luke, and today we are going to look through an example that I made of a couple who is planning for their retirement and trying to figure out how much money they need to save every single year to meet their retirement goals. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is determine the amount of income that they're going to need to retire. And then second, we're going to determine the total lump sum that they're going to need by the first day of their retirement based off of the amount of income that they want to receive every single year. Third, we're going to see if this is even possible for them. And then fourth, we're going to determine how much money they will need to retire successfully by maybe adding to their current savings rate or subtracting from how much they're saving every year. And so, just before I begin, I just wanted to say that I hope you learned something from this. I've been learning a lot of financial concepts over the past couple of years, and I'm also trying to learn how to explain things better. So, this is a learning process for me, and hopefully, you are able to learn something as well. Let's begin by looking at details on Logan and Martha's situation. And first off, they are a married couple and they are currently at the age of 45. Okay. And they want to retire in 20 years at the age of 65. Currently, Logan and Martha survive off of an income of $150,000 every single year. All right. And they have a current savings rate of 3% of the income that Logan brings in. All right. Now, 2% of their income goes towards their workplace 401k, and another 1% goes towards Logan's traditional IRA. And they hope to have a retirement that lasts for 30 years in total. Now, another thing that is going to be important about their situation is Logan's employer match, which will add, another 100% on top of the amount that he's currently contributing. So if he is contributing $3,000, he gets double that. It's pretty straightforward. And after he contributes more than 4% of his income every single year towards his retirement, he gets another 50% match on the next 2% of contributions that he decides to sock away into his 401k. Now that we understand that, we need to know how much they have in their retirement savings, which is $140,000 inside of Logan's workplace 401k and $30,000 inside of his traditional IRA. Now, as promised, we are going to first determine how much income they anticipate on needing during their retirement. And the way we do this is by calculating something called a wage replacement ratio. And I have a whole video explaining this that you can click on the banner up here if you'd like to learn more about how the wage replacement ratio works. But for this scenario, I'm going to give Logan and Martha a wage replacement ratio of 72%. And so we're going to multiply 72% by $150,000 to get $108,000. Now, if they were to, retire tomorrow, then they would say, "Hey, we need $108,000 to continue our current lifestyle." That's pretty much what that means. But they're not retiring tomorrow. They're retiring in 20 years. So, what happens to money over time? Well, it loses its value because of inflation. And that is something that we need to account for when determining how much income we're going to need during retirement. So, with this inflation calculation, we are going to inflate this $108,000 by 2% for 20 years to get a future value of roughly $160,000. And right down here, I have my time value money calculation, which with my HP 10B2 Plus calculator, where you can see everything that I did to get this $160,000. So if you are maybe getting your degree in finance or you're trying to calculate, time value money just by yourself for determining your own retirement, then hopefully this can be helpful for you with that. Now, that we understand how much money they're going to need every single year for their retirement, which is $160,000, which, just to say, is a lot of money. Um, they thankfully are not going to have to pay that full $160,000 out of their pocket because they're also going to get Social Security. Now, if they were to retire tomorrow with a current income of $150,000, then I'm going to estimate that they will get $42,000 of Social Security every single year. And we need to again account for the fact that Social Security actually does get inflated every single year. It gets a cost of living adjustment because the government is completely aware of inflation, which is super nice. So that means that they are going to get a future value of $69,000 for their Social Security. And I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this. If they have a future value of $160,000 that they're going to need in income, and they're going to get $69,000 of Social Security, then they get to subtract that $69,000 from the $160,000 that they're going to need in the future to figure out that they're going to need $91,000 every single year during their retirement to retire successfully and with their current lifestyle. Okay. And again, this right here is my time value money calculation for figuring out this future value. All right. So this, now that we know that they're going to need $91,000 every single year out of their own pockets that they're going to have to contribute, this is going to be our basis for figuring out the lump sum that they will need in the future. Okay. And the lump sum that they will need is $2,275,000. Now, again, I made a video talking about the 4% rule, which is what is used to calculate this lump sum, and I'll put another banner up here in the corner for you to click on in case if you want to learn more about that. So all you have to do is just multiply 91,000 times 25 to get the lump sum of $2,275,000. And it's called the 4% rule because $91,000 is 4% of $2,275,000. Now that we understand the amount of money that they are going to need to achieve their goal of receiving $91,000 a year for their retirement, let's see if they will actually be able to achieve this with their current savings rate. So currently they have $140,000 inside of their workplace 401k and $30,000 inside of Logan's traditional IRA. And the combined employee and employer contribution that is being put into this workplace 401k is $6,000 a year. $3,000 is coming from Logan, and the other $3,000 is coming from his work. And Logan is still contributing $1,500 a year into his traditional IRA. And I purposely made the example like this because I wanted to just point out that, maybe you are, contributing to a traditional IRA and you have a little bit more of an employer match that you can use up. It might be worth considering just thinking about the possibility of contributing to the 401k because you get to double your money up to 4% of your income in contributions, which is fantastic, which is a great deal that employers do for their employees. So, that's just something that I wanted to point out right here. Now we're going to look at the future value calculation of uh, Logan and Martha's saving for retirement. Now, in 20 years, the 401k is going to equal $669,000, and the traditional IRA is going to equal $151,000 with a 6% interest rate. Okay, and just an FYI here, I use the 6% interest rate because it is a conservative estimate for people who want to invest aggressively. And I'm just going to assume that Logan and Martha, since I would say that, just starting out at age 45 with, $140,000 for their retirement in their 401k and 30,000 in their traditional IRA, they might want to invest aggressively because they're going to need a lot of money. And as you can see, this $821,000 that is going to be the total amount of money that they will have in 20 years from their savings into their 401k and their traditional IRA is not enough to have an income of $91,000 every single year. I mean, you can just see the distance between this, $821,000 and this $2,275,000. It's a pretty big gap, and their current savings rate is just not going to cut it. And I also just wanted to give you all a time value money calculation um, explanation right here so that you can see how I came up with the numbers. So now I'm going to have to break it to Logan and Martha that their current savings is not really enough to retire based on the goals that they have for the future. And if we run a time value money calculation, we can determine that if they want $2,275,000 in 20 years, that they're going to have to save roughly $47,000 every single year towards their retirement instead of just 7,500. So it's a lot more money, and I would assume that Logan and Martha would not be very pleased with this. I mean, $47,000 is, almost a third of their income. Like, that's a lot of money. And just keep in mind that this doesn't account for the fact that they are also receiving a employer contribution of $7,500 with all the matches that they get. 100% on the first 4%, 50% on the first 2%. Okay, so they would have to pay $39,500 every single year by just deferring that towards their 401k. All right, so it'll be, that money won't be taxed, which is nice. Like they're not gonna have to pay tax on the 39,500, but at the same time, like that's a lot of income that they're gonna have to give up. And so, yeah, I'm just gonna assume that they're not gonna be cool with that, and that they're gonna come to me and say, "Hey, Luke, what can we do to decrease this, you know, monstrous amount of money that we're going to have to contribute towards retirement?" And I would just say, you know what? I hear what you're saying. That is a lot of money. Let's just run some numbers and figure out how to reduce this down a little bit. Okay. So the first solution that I have for Logan and Martha in this situation is to lower the income that they need during their retirement. And let's just say, for this example, that they, instead of, you know, expecting $91,000 every single year for their retirement, that they lower that expectation to just getting $70,000 every year during their retirement, which is honestly still pretty good. Like, that's a lot of money, okay? You'll still be able to, travel, give your grandkids some presents, eat some good food, everything like that. So it's not that bad. Plus, Social Security is going to still cover a significant portion of their retirement. This will lower their yearly savings rate from, $47,000 to $32,000. So it lowers it by, like $15,000. It's a lot. That's awesome. And not to mention the fact that they still get their employer contributions, which is $7,500, which will decrease that $32,000 all the way down to $24,500. All right. And this would just reduce the lump sum from $2,275,000 to $1,750,000. So it's a lot more doable, but I'd still have the feeling that Logan and Martha would still say that's still too much money to save for retirement. And I know if I was in their situation, I would also be like, like yeah, that would be tough. And I'm sure you're kind of feeling that too, just watching this. Like, you know, that's a that's a lot of money to contribute towards a workplace 401k and a traditional IRA every year. So that's why I decided to come up with another solution. And this solution uses this $70,000 that I, um, I'm going to recommend for Logan and Martha because, we have to use really a combination of things to reach our goals sometimes with retirement planning. And so we're just going to pull on this $70,000 and say that they still decide to only take $70,000 every single year during their retirement, but they retire 2 years later. And the reason why retiring later helps so much is because it gives you an extra 2 years to save, which is just awesome because not only are you saving more for your retirement during this time, you also are not taking away from the lump sum that you have worked so hard to save up, okay? And so it also means that you are not going to be in retirement for as long. And so to account for that, I just knocked off uh, 2 points from the 4% rule multiplier of 25. So now it's going to be 23. Okay. So we would multiply $70,000, okay, by 23 to get $1,610,000, which is obviously smaller than this $1,750,000. And now their time horizon is going to be 22 years until retirement. And now they have this goal of saving up a total of $1,610,000. So here's the time value money calculation, and you can see that they have a new yearly payment of $23,000, which is again much more doable. And considering the fact that they can subtract their employer contribution of $7,500, the amount that Logan and Martha must contribute toward retirement is now $15,500, which is way, way more doable than $39,500. Okay. So, $15,500, I'm landing at this number because that's 10% of their income. And that's really usually what people um, should be saving for their retirement. Usually people save between 8 and 12% of their income towards their retirement. And so they're just really right in the middle of that. And I would hope that Logan and Martha would be okay with this. It's, you know, really what they're going to have to do to be able to retire, with still being able to do some of those things in mind that they wanted to do originally in terms of their lifestyle choices and so on and so forth. So, look, all that being said, I hope this video was helpful. And, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. And I plan on making more videos like this, so stay tuned to just view some of those. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a nice day.